somebody who cares, supposedly cares, about police brutality in the United States, seems to turn a blind eye to it when it's a Russian-backed thug that's beating and maiming and murdering Briahna Joy Gray, okay? Briahna Joy Gray. For those of you who don't know Briahna Joy Gray, she is the former press secretary for former presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, current senator from Vermont. She had on somebody who was very supportive of Ukraine like a week or so ago. We talked about it on the channel. We were not very happy with some of the things she said in that interview. I disagree with her heavily. Anyway, she gave a lot of pushback. The point is, she gave a ton of pushback. All you need to know is that when somebody was on her show saying we should give aid to Ukraine, she was there to give pushback, and she gave a ton of it. Making sure, like every other sentence that guy would say, she would make sure, like, I gotta push back on this idea of giving aid to Ukraine. I'm pushing back on aid to Ukraine, right? Now she has Roger Waters on. Roger Waters, you know, he's a musician. He's very popular for being a musician, and he also has political beliefs, and he is not supportive of Ukraine at all. Not at all. He thinks we should give no aid to Ukraine. And his reasoning is often embedded in a lot of Russian conspiracy theories about the Euromaidan revolution and a lot of other nonsense. And after seeing Briahna Joy Gray give so much pushback to that other person when it came to whether or not we should give aid to Ukraine, and not only giving pushback, but then taking that pushback and posting it on Twitter again and again and again, plugging her Patreon with it again and again and again, plugging the full video that she eventually released due to all the commotion about it, and then plugging that video again and again and again. After so much pushing of it, so much amplifying of the message she gave against aid there, and then arguing with people for days on Twitter, she then has the opportunity to speak to one of the most famous musicians on the planet, who has been going on CNN and other news channels saying nonsense. This Pink Floyd musician saying nonsense about the war. He comes on and makes the claim that America overthrew the Ukrainian government, and an illegal CIA-backed coup, starts making statements about the Victoria Nuland phone call, starts bringing that up as evidence, even though it wasn't evidence that it was a CIA-backed coup. He says everything he's about to say. Briahna Joy Gray didn't push back on any of the lies he said after giving so much pushback and really pumping it everywhere for the other stuff. Listen to this. This is insane. Again, she once again is proving the name Bad Faith Politics, Bad Faith Podcast, to be very, very accurate. Let's listen.
Now that we have engaged in giving funding, and there are military ventures afoot, and like, you know, what do you think should be done at this point with respect to aid for Ukraine?
Aid?
Yeah.
For Ukraine?
Yeah.
Well,
military, humanitarian, all of it.
Well, obviously, you should never have made any military contributions to Ukraine at the start. You should have got into the negotiation probably in 2007 and figured it out then, 7 years before the illegal coup that deposed the democratically elected government of Ukraine. And as we know, funded by the United States, organized by the CIA, Victoria Nuland was there. Her conversations are well known because they were taped and leaked with Jeffrey Pyatt. Pyatt was his name, the American ambassador. And where, interestingly enough, in one of those conversations, he asks about, but what about the EU? And she says, fuck the EU. Yeah. And it's on tape. Yeah. What a dummy.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, you know, the EU.
So it should have been dealt with then. But American foreign policy is we are going to rule the world. We are ruling the world, and we're going to go on ruling the world. We are happy with this unipolar state where the only country that has any real power in the world is the United States of America, and we're going to keep it like that. And that is what that's what the expansion of NATO right up to the Russian border was about. Well, guess what, Biden and the rest of you in the hierarchy of politics in the United States, you're living in the past. The unipolar thing ain't going to fly. And if you've been reading any of the news from anywhere around the world, you will know that the rest of the world, the other 3/4 of the population of the world, does not agree with you about Ukraine. It's only you and Western Europe.
This is, not only did she not give pushback to anything he said, including multiple things that were lies. He lied about the CIA organizing a coup. He lied that the coup was funded by the CIA. He's saying overthrowing the democratically elected government. He's not talking about how Viktor Yanukovych tried to ban protesting, murdered the Heavenly Hundred, over 100 protesters, and went back on the association agreement, which he promised to go through on. He doesn't bring any of that up. Somebody who cares, supposedly cares, about police brutality in the United States seems to turn a blind eye to it when it's a Russian-backed thug that's beating and maiming and murdering young women and young men going out to protest against the regime that was in Ukraine at the time. Now, he leaves out all of that, but I don't have respect for Roger Waters. I don't think he's done the proper research on the issue. Nothing in the Victoria Nuland phone call, which he brought up as evidence and then she played a part of, at all confirms that it was a CIA organized coup. At all confirms that the CIA funded money to protesters, push guns in the country. None of this happened. None of it. It's just a lie. He just lied. He lied. He's not the first person to say this lie, and he won't be the last person to say this lie. But notice something. Not only did Briahna Joy Gray not give any pushback, no pushback whatsoever, she starts providing evidence for him. She plays part of the Victoria Nuland phone call, meaning that she didn't just clip this and then immediately upload this after having the conversation. She clipped it, and then she started doing research and getting the clips on the things he was talking about, and then she includes the Victoria Nuland phone call, meaning she has no excuse whatsoever to have not called out the lie he said about it being a CIA organized coup. She has no excuse about spreading that misinformation whatsoever. She had the time to cut the clip. She had the time to get more clips from the conversations Victoria Nuland was having of saying fuck the EU, stuff like that. She was able to do that. She was willing to do the research. She was willing to repost this and to pump it. But then she gives no pushback, not only on the lies he said, but on the narratives he's pushing. Or give any more context about, well, you say the democratically elected government. Well, let's talk about the Heavenly Hundred, the people who were murdered. Let's talk about Yanukovych banning protesting. I don't think Briahna Joy Gray or Roger Waters would be happy with that. Both of them supposedly don't like police violence. I don't as well. I don't think that's a fake thing they believe, but does that end at the borders? Does it end at the border? I don't think so. So I think the reaction from the Ukrainian people, which this is actually what happened in Euromaidan. Viktor Yanukovych promises in his re-election campaign, even up into 2013, that he's going to enter an association agreement with the EU, allowing visa-free travel from Ukraine to the rest of the EU, and having an economic agreement with them. At the last second, he pulls out of it, going back on his word. Some Ukrainians don't like that. Students specifically, especially young people. So they go to Maidan Square and they protest. The police respond by beating the living crap out of them. More Ukrainians get angry. They then join the protest because they don't like to see young people getting beaten up. That's when you see the Auto Maidan start. That's when you see Maidan in other places like Kharkiv and other major cities like Lviv. You see people come out there. The police respond to that by getting even more violent. They used the Berkut, a special police force which has been accused of rape, racketeering, torture, a lot of crimes. They send them in to beat up protesters and get really violent. They don't even a lot of times use normal police batons. They use stuff that's basically metal poles to beat protesters. They took gears and screws and nails and they tied it around flashbangs and threw it into crowds, maiming and hurting people. One or two people start dying. People start to die. And so the Euromaidan protesters, they get organized. They start making medical bays and stuff in locations. They're camping out for weeks, and they start negotiating with the government to not only see all the people who were arrested for protesting freed, but also to see the Yanukovych regime leave this backstabbing of the Ukrainian people when it comes to pulling out of the association agreement, but also seeing him resign. He responds to these negotiations by then trying to ban gatherings of more than 3 people and getting even more violent with protesters, leading to over 100 people dying. That is when, after another round of failed negotiations, he fled the country. They didn't even overthrow the government. Yanukovych fled the country. He just left. There was no CIA organizing of that. There's no evidence for it, and it's a straight lie. And for all of that pain and suffering the Ukrainian people went through, for the people who died, for the people who struggled on Euromaidan for a democratic future, who struggled on Euromaidan against police brutality. You know, Euromaidan led to the abolishment of the Berkut, one of the most brutal police wings in Ukraine, the special police force, which racketeered people, beat people, tortured people, murdered people. What about the Tatushky thugs that were being hired, literal gang criminals hired to go stab protesters in places like Kharkiv? Look, I'm getting a little heated here, but it's just so, it shows me Briahna Joy Gray's priorities when she has somebody come on to make the case for sending aid to Ukraine based on these humanitarian reasons as to why Ukrainians are suffering, and she has all the pushback in the world and is willing to blast that pushback everywhere, debate people for weeks about it, you know, going back and forth on Twitter, you know, then make the full thing available for everyone for free, plugging her Patreon all along the way. But then Roger Waters comes on her show, lies to her viewers and to her and to everybody who's going to see this tweet, lies about it being a CIA organized coup, and she cuts that, uploads it, gives no pushback. Not only does she give pushback, she makes it look like he sourced what he said well by playing a Victoria Nuland clip of saying fuck the EU. She had all the opportunities in the world to not only counter this, but to fact check it, because she was willing to get the information, get all the data to back them up on Victoria Nuland saying fuck the EU, but didn't leave a single comment or a single edit or a single counter or a single source from talking about the CIA coup. That's just played freely. No counterance whatsoever. But if you dare say that Ukraine deserves some military aid, that will get it. She will go into the trenches and fight you. She will fight you as if it's you're both fighting like rabid dogs over the last sandwich on the planet. But if you lie about Ukrainian history, if you lie about over 100 people dying and what they died for and what they sacrificed when facing down the special police force, just say it's CIA coup, that will get no pushback. That tells me her priorities. That tells me when she's having a conversation about Ukraine, what type of message she wants to get out of it, what type of message she wants viewers to take away from these interviews, from these conversations, from these stories, from who she's interviewing, and what's her priority to counter, and what's her priority to just let, you know, people run away with. Like, why so much pushback on the other example, but this time, no pushback whatsoever. The only thing you're going to cite in that clip that you're pumping everywhere is going to be that clip to make Roger Waters look like he's telling the truth. Pretty bad. Pretty bad in my opinion. Very bad. Actually, very bad in my opinion. You know, I always would be willing to talk to Briahna Joy Gray about my opinions about Ukraine. I went to Ukraine, talked about what I saw over there. I would do my best to be very diplomatic, but this makes me think that the name bad faith is literal, not, you know, a hee hee ha ha.